Good evening, everyone. I am Paula Fontana, Vice President of Strategic Programming Initiatives with the National Black MBA Association, and thank you so much for joining us for Word on the Street, Demystifying Working at Google. So, a little bit about the National Black MBA Association. Our mission is to lead in the creation of educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for Blacks throughout all stages of their careers as students, professionals, and entrepreneurs. We accomplish that mission in partnership with organizations such as Google that take the time to engage with our members, providing that pathway to opportunity. So there is so much talk these days about the future of work and how technology will be the conduit to success for that work. So, what better organization than Google to help us understand the different pathways to the technology industry as well as address some common misconceptions? So, I would like to welcome our esteemed panel of Googlers to kick things off with me. I would love for you all to kick things off by introducing yourselves, including your role, your team, and how long you've been at Google.
Thank you, Paula. Welcome, everyone. I am Anise Maston. I'm a senior marketing manager for Google Cloud. More specifically, I focus on cloud support. I've been with Google for 1 year, and I have the privilege of focusing on amplifying, building narratives for demand generation so they will buy the Google services attached to Google Cloud. I've actually attained my MBA from Vanderbilt University, Owen Graduate School of Management.
Awesome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Craig Career, and I am what they call a people partner in our Unified Fulfillment Optimization Organization and Cloud CISO, Cloud Security. I've been at Google almost 2 years. I'll have been here 2 years as of August, and I get my MBA from Seattle University. I have the pleasure of being part of the Seattle community where I reside, where the current president is Tracy Harrell. So shout out to all the wonderful members of the Seattle chapter of Black MBA.
That is awesome.
It's a pleasure to be here. I am Lola Adams. I'm a product manager for Chrome, focused on our larger screens. I am really passionate about improving the web experience for users on tablets and foldables, and whether that's through Chrome or working with different partners and web ecosystem to improve the overall user experience. And I have been at Google for 5 years now. And for MBA, I attended Washington University Olin Business School. Go Bears!
Wonderful.
Fantastic. My name is Reginald Chapman, and turns out I am a life member of the National Black MBA Association. So it's always a pleasure to be with this company and with this audience. I have been at Google now for just short of a year, and I am responsible for a software development program management team who ensures that we're able to produce and deliver products and tools for internal Googlers. And again, I'm a member of the Bay Area chapter of the National Black MBA Association. And of course, we're going to win National Chapter of the Year in Atlanta this year. So
Shameless plug, right?
exactly.
So thank you guys all for joining and of course for being active and engaged members of the association. Would love to know and would love for everyone to answer this particular question. What was your first job in the tech industry and how did you land that job?
Thank you, Paula. My first role in the tech industry was right after I graduated from undergrad at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I received a BBA with emphasis in information system management. I'd completed my research to see that the IT roles were off the chart. So I wanted to go to a place where brown person like me had ample opportunities. So I received a role as an applications developer for Willis Caroon, which is an insurance brokerage firm. I was there for about 3 years, promoted at 18 months, and at 3 years, I left to go and obtain my MBA.
Excellent. What about you, Craig? What was your first job in the tech industry?
My first job in the tech industry was a little bit non-traditional. I was working at an insurance firm as an HR person, and I made a career shift, and I took a role as a business analyst. So that was the opportunity for me to get a little flavor for what is it like to be in technology, what is it like to work for a larger company, and then I took that years later to parlay that into my first big tech company. This is my second. So my trajectory on how I got here is a little bit different. But my first opportunity was in position being identifying a new role in the company that I was working in.
Excellent. Lola, how about you? Your first job?
My first job was right after undergrad in tech. For my undergrad, I studied computer engineering. And so, after undergrad, like most computer engineering graduates, my first job was a software engineer in a tech startup. But because it was a startup, I got to like wear multiple hats. I was also sort of, the database administrator. I was also the IT consultant. I was speaking to the customers directly. And so I was doing a little bit of like marketing, and so I got to like have like different flavors and wear different hats. And I feel like that was actually pivotal to like my career over time because I actually had a really strong foundation learning about like the different sort of functional roles within tech. And I landed that job by, networking, showing that I'm passionate about the field overall, like speaking to a lot of folks in the tech industry. And so when it was time for me to actually, after graduation, I had this network of people I could reach out to say, I'm interested in pursuing this field.
Awesome. And then Reginald, what about you?
Yes, well, my answer is pretty short and sweet. It's not a nice long story and a nice journey. I got the hookup. My wife was working for Apple 30 years ago, and right after I finished grad school, and she was like, "Hey, hon, this is a place to be." And so she put in a good word for me with someone that she knew at the company, and that was my first stop in tech. I went to work for Apple. It was based upon knowing somebody who was very close to me, so it worked out great.
And I do hear a common theme as networking being important and critical. May come back to that one a little bit later. But Reginald, since you didn't have a long story then, let's just bust and demystify right now. So
Yes.
what is the biggest misconception you've heard about working at Google?
Well, I would say, as with all mysteries, it's partially true, right? One of the things that you do hear that is mostly true is that the people at Google are certainly of high caliber individuals, people with fantastic resumes and backgrounds, and are super smart, right? So that's what you hear about it, and it turns out it's true. But here's the thing: is that one of the things that happens is that because of that reputation, people may develop a little bit of an imposter syndrome as they even apply for a job or even when they get here. But at the end of the day, what you find out is that you will fit here, is that you will do well here, and that you can perform well in this environment. So don't worry about the mystery about whether or not it's a tough environment or a competitive environment or just a bunch of super smart people. All those things are true, but all those things are true about you as well. And so you should feel comfortable that you will be able to do very well and compete and shine in this environment.
I love that, encouraging people right out the gate. Anise, what about you? Biggest misconception you've heard about working at Google?
Well, the biggest misconception I heard was actually about getting into Google, that I would have to answer these crazy questions that nobody can figure out. The process for the interview process is 4 stages, and they actually look at leadership ability, role related knowledge, Googliness, as well as your cognitive abilities. And so those were four straightforward interviews. I studied the role. I knew the role. I studied what Google was all about, so I could answer all of the questions. So I think when people think, "Oh, I've got to answer how many beans I see in that jar," no, answer your questions. They want to know how we think. So it's not just give the right answers. It's like go through the process. Well, first I would consider this. Next, they want to see how we think if we're innovative. So that's the biggest misconception that I'd heard.
Those are pretty big. Um, Thank you both for that. Craig, let's jump to you. Thinking about what made you decide to join Google, what are the 2 to 3 most important motivators for you?
I think for me, the biggest motivation is I love the speed of innovation and technology, right? And so this is, like I mentioned before, this is my second organization. The reason I got out the first time was because of the speed and the innovation. I felt I needed a break from it. But what I missed that component of, and then as I kind of reset and my expectations of what I wanted a place where I could come in every day and virtually hear, talk about, see our products being used, right? And that requires a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and that speed of innovation, that pace is something now that gets me really excited. And of course, I'm on the people partner side. So to Reggie's point earlier, we have some strong people here, the smartest, the best, the brightest, and I love having the opportunity to partner with, work with, and in some cases lead those people.
Great. Lola, what about you? 2 to 3 most important motivators when deciding to join Google.
Yeah, my motivators are like really similar to Craig. I feel like the first one was just creating solutions for everyone, right? Being able to see our product or people using our product. And this was really important for me because I was born and raised outside of the US, right? So I wanted to work with a company where they could actually build products that would positively impact the lives of people back home. And I also wanted to like lend my voice to achieve that representation for sort of share my perspective, share sort of my learnings and how I was raised, and have that reflected in our products, right? And so I'm so lucky because my current role as a product manager for Chrome, I get to make the web more accessible for people back home in Nigeria, and also thinking about the continent as we sort of think about like that lens of users using the product in those regions. I think the second reason is just really similar to Craig. We have so much talent at Google. I work with some of the smartest people, super collaborative, really diverse set of people. And I think lastly, also, which was something I learned as I actually started at Google as an intern, MBA intern, before I joined fully. I also learned about the zero blame culture, which allows you to sort of like, take risk and take those initiatives. So those were my 3 reasons for joining Google.
Great reasons. So I heard a few people talk about, perhaps the tech industry wasn't their first industry, or maybe they first dipped their toe in tech and then left, and then now you're back. So what, and anyone can feel free to answer this, what was the most challenging part about transitioning into the tech industry?
I'll take it first. I think the opportunity for me coming into the tech industry, and both times I've been here, right, is business acumen. So what do I mean by that is it's really critical, at least in my role, that I understand what it is that my clients are doing. How does the business operate? How are we doing engineering functions, and or how are we making money, right? So I think that is a critical piece of understanding what we need to do to be able to make the business operate, or I need to be able to help make the business operate most effectively.
Great. Anyone else? Most challenging part about transitioning into tech?
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick here. I would say that the most, and this almost applies for any sort of role, quite frankly, but more particularly in tech, and even more specifically at Google, is that every industry and every company has its own language and lingo and a way that they terms and terminology. And so the one of the things that I would do every time I would take them, I would first of all try to understand it from the outside how people talk about that company or that industry and learn the language that way. And then as I would sit through meetings, like when I first couple of months on a job, I would always just write down words or phrases or terms that I'd never heard before. And if I could ask somebody quickly, great. But by and large, by doing your own research, once you're able to figure out those words and terms, again, it's just like learning a foreign language. Once you're able to put it together, once you're able to communicate, then you can fake your way through a couple of months until you get to the point at which you feel more like you're an expert. But learning the language of technology is critically important.
Hey, Paula, we have a thing in Google that we say is +1. So I +1 the Reggie's comment. That means I totally agree with what you said. So +1. Using a little bit of that Google language, right?
I think I'm going to have to steal it and use it as my own. +1. That sounds so much better than piggyback or cosine. So heard a lot about the Black community not feeling supported in tech. So I would love to hear about how does the Black community at Google support one another?
Paula, I can take that one. I was actually on board during COVID. So I didn't get the experience of going out to a week at the Google headquarters, getting on the bike, getting my picture. I was at home alone. So I see the Black community in two ways. First of all, there are all types of BRG, business resource groups, that I look for. I joined the Black Google Network. I joined BOM, which is the Black at Leaders for Marketers. I joined Mixed Googlers. I was joining Black at Cloud. I was joining everything to feel connected. And those groups have various resources, events, people that I connect with and network with. So that's one Black community. The next Black community I would lift up is that individuals. There's an intranet where I can look at various people and what they do, and I can reach out to a Black Googler and say, hey, I'm a Noogler, new to Google. I want to learn more about what you do. So can I get 15 minutes on your calendar? Not one Black community person has turned me down. And with that, I have gained my Google executive mentor. He has said, you need to meet this person, use my name. And so now my network has expanded because I just raised my hand and said, may I get on your calendar? So I think the Black community supports NBRGs and then on an individual level as well.
That is amazing. And only a year, I think you said you've been there, right?
Only 1 year.
Awesome. Anyone else? How does a Black community support one another at Google?
Let me tell a quick story, right? And this piece is more about allyship. I interviewed with Google on May 27, 2020, right? May 25th was when, unfortunately, George Floyd was murdered, was killed, right? And so coming into that interview with a lot on my mind, I thought I had killed the first two interviews, and this was my third, and I didn't do that well, right? The follow-up from the two directors that I talked to, I wasn't a Googler at the time, just to check in on me, to see how I was doing, how I was processing things, I thought spoke volumes about where Google was, at least in that continuum, from my lens and the journey that I have been on before, right? So I have experienced the support from the allyship very differently at Google than I have in other places. And then to Anissa's point, participation in the ERG groups, building my own community within the HR people partner community, within my own network, because I too started as a person in a pandemic. Those have been wonderful experiences for me, having that support when I first came in kind of that tragic environment, and well as building my career here at Google.
That is a wonderful story. So I appreciate that you're sharing not just the support between ERGs Black, but support throughout with the allyship. So thank you so much for sharing that perspective as well.
Paula, I'd like to add a little bit more because Craig made a good point. Once I joined Google, when events would happen out in the community, Google allowed the Black community to actually create these events that were We could go on them and express how we felt, if we were angry, how it felt to show up at work. And even our chief diversity officer would show up. They would have psychologists and therapists in there to help us deal with various things. This is the first company I've ever been at that takes the time to make sure we can have events where we are free to be authentic and say, I'm angry, I'm mad. So after all of these awesome tragedies that have been happening, I can say that Google enables us to do that. That is a great benefit.
Absolutely. As they say, culture eats strategy every day. So thank you for that additional commentary as well. Would like to know a little bit more now about who has changed jobs since you've been there and elaborating on your experience of transferring roles, teams, continuing to feel that support, if you will.
I can take that. I have transferred roles 3 times at Google, and I actually moved teams twice, and I totally changed my job ladder once. And so I feel like I could speak a lot more to this. And using sort of like the MBA lingo, where a lot of folks like have an MBA to do 3 things, right? Like career acceleration, career switching, where you totally switch from something you were doing before to something new, or become an entrepreneur, right? And I think Google is a great example of how you can do all three within the same company. And I'm going to sort of talk about my experience. I changed from being a program manager when I joined Google, and I moved into strategy and ops, which was sort of within the same job role on ladder, right? And then I moved into a commercialization role, which is also a little bit different. And later, I made a quick change from program management, ladder transfer, into product management, which is on a technical ladder. Like all of the other roles are non-technical ladders. And so some of the things Google did really well. The first one is just having a clearly defined process, right? And this is the process to actually transfer from one functional area to another, or moving from one organization, whether that is YouTube to Google Cloud, or whether that is Google Cloud to Chrome, right? So we have like really, really clear and well-defined processes. We have an internal job board where you could actually see a lot of opportunities across the company, across different organizations. The second thing is you actually have an ability to try out the new role. I'm not sure if there's any other place this is done, right? Where you could do a 20% where you spend 20% of your time actually trying out the new role. For example, if you were to be a salesperson trying to get into marketing, for example, to be a marketing manager, you could actually spend 20% of your time being a marketing manager and get to know if you truly love the role. Sometimes what's on paper is different from what's reality, right? So
Right, right.
yeah, so you get the opportunity to do that. But in addition to 20% roles, we also have something called the ladder trial, where you could spend 100% of your time, doing the new role. And you're guaranteed to be able to return to your old team if for any reason you don't want to, proceed with the new role or with the new team. And so we have ladder trial, which also helps. Your head count is guaranteed, which sort of gives you, that's a peace of mind to, be able to like crush it on that new role without having to think about, am I going to lose my job if I don't do well in this new role? You can always go back to your next role. And I think thirdly, something Google does really well is provide mentorship throughout that process, right? So you would get mentors, like speak to people who have been through that process, but also have like new managers, old managers, providing that mentorship. You also get to develop, like get sponsors that could actually speak to your work on like the new team. And so Google has made it really easy for you to be able to not just move across different organizations. If you join Google in cloud, where you're really passionate about TV, for example, you could move to Google TV, but also make that career switch If you wanted to move to a new role, you could go across different job functions. And lastly, the other one for MBAs is entrepreneurship, right? Google also has specific programs like Area 120, where you could actually be the CEO and bring a new product to life, right? With your headcount guaranteed, and so you could actually test out those entrepreneurship skills and all of the learnings from your MBA, and get to actually like work with it, make it practical. And you also get sponsors, mentors throughout this process, right? And you get to launch a product. So yeah, I want to say that's one of the reasons. I know I listed like 3 reasons why I joined Google, but there's just a lot. Like the list is super long. And so this is also one of the reasons by joining Google, you're not boxing yourself to just one area, but you have opportunities within the company to move around.
That is incredible. I have never heard anything like this before. I mean, it sparks innovation. So I love this. Love it. Um, Anyone else want to add to that? I know it was quite thorough. Be hard to read it. So outside of the amazing benefits that Lola just listed, any other benefits that you love taking advantage of, whether it's personal or professional?
I can take that one. There's so many to choose from, which is one great thing. I like the fact, as Lola mentioned, there are opportunities to take a 20% project.
Mhm.
Now, my passions are marketing plus IT. So I'm at Google doing marketing at an IT firm. But now my mind is opened up to the fact that my other area of passion, belonging, inclusion, I can get a job that places all three together. And by the way, I was also a board member of the National Black MBA chapter of Atlanta, and we won chapter of the year twice, Reginald. while I was So that is a wonderful benefit because in my 20% project, I can get access to inclusion projects, belonging projects to build my aptitude for it and demonstrate when I apply for a job or should I apply for a job that I can bring that value add to the table. Another benefit I'll mention is Google has actually taken upon itself, because of the Black Google Network, to start helping the Black community pay off their loans. There's a
Mm.
certain amount every year. You just have to go through the process. Google will give you that against your loans each year. And then the last one I'll say is because it's not huge in our community, and everyone likely already has this benefit. Use your EAP. That's your Employee Assistance Program. All that means is that you have the tools. There are a lot of stresses, there are a lot of things that's going on. And so many times in our community, we think it means you're crazy, you need a therapist. But
Right.
it's simply tools that enable me to get a coach for my career. It enables me to get a therapist if I need it. It enables me, whatever my goals are, I have and can get an assignment to talk with someone, get the guidance from one to build my career, to release stress, to do the things to ensure that I have the best career ever at Google. So those are the three I'd like to highlight.
You guys are getting me excited about. Shh, don't tell anybody. No.
Can I just add one in there real quick, Paula, that I actually haven't taken advantage of, but I'm going to plan on taking it, is the work from anywhere in the world for a month
What?
benefit. Yeah.
You guys are
Progress from
making this
Plus 1,000 on that one.
up.
So I've got a trip to South Africa I'm looking at. I got a trip to some other places I'm looking at, but to be able to have that flexibility to extend that trip and, oh, by the way, be able to work while I'm there is something that I'm looking forward to.
That is impressive. Impressive. So when we posted this particular webinar, we asked for people to submit questions, and so I want to now hit some of the questions that were pre-submitted, if you don't mind. So the first question that arose was, how does Google enable you to grow professionally and personally?
I'll jump in on that one real quick here. So personally, one of the things that Google is big on is promoting well-being, which is the point of, listen, to really what Anise was saying as well, right? Take care of yourself, both physically, mentally, and otherwise, because you have to be your best self to be able to perform. So that's number one. But then number two, from a professional standpoint, in terms of everything that Lola called out, one of the things as well that an additional sort of a benefit to help you with your career is to all of the training and all of the education that Google will either pay for 100% or 75%, depending on what degree or what sort of education program you're going for. So taking care of yourself professionally are things that Google promotes highly, and it's something that everyone should be looking to do wherever they are. But certainly at Google, they provide those opportunities in abundance.
Hmm. Anyone else want to tackle that one specifically? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit with that last couple questions.
I'll say just a few words that in Google, you are encouraged to understand you own your personal and professional development. And so those resources are out there for you to engage. We have an intranet where you can look up the various resources, and it's up to you or each individual to plug in where they like. So it allows for an opportunity and the autonomy for you to actually take care of yourself personally and professionally. And I just say, know yourself, know your triggers, know what you need, and then it'll empower you to where you need to plug in. Those are the best things about those resources.
Great. And Anise, I'd love to sort of stick with you for a second because we talked about inclusion, belonging. So wanted to know what, if any, initiatives are being taken at Google to foster that culture of inclusion and belonging for all employees.
That's a wonderful question. Part of the 20% project that I joined is called Racial Equity and Discrimination Advisory Board. It's part of the Black Google Network. So with that, I've learned that the Black Google Network actually, before I joined Google, started an initiative so that there would be what we call OKRs, objectives and key results by our various groups, and they must place accountability to the top leaders to actually ensure that their org includes belonging and inclusion as an OKR. So it's not just the talk, there has to be tangible results by each org, we call them PAs, where they are showing how they are including belonging and inclusion. I'll give that one example and then open it up to the rest of my counterparts.
That's a great example. Belonging is everything. Anyone else have anything to add on that?
Yeah, to build on that, from a product perspective, our products are actually built to also be inclusive, right? We go through this process where we have to think about the different users that we have. We also have a team that is dedicated to like product inclusivity, right? To make sure that our products reflect our users, right? And so, even for every feature we launch, we have to go through this cross-functional reviews where we look at things like accessibility, where we make sure that do we have users from like different needs? Are they able to use this feature, right? Are we catering to their needs? And so we also factor that into how we build our products. The second thing I wanted to highlight for me, when I think about inclusion, I think about representation a lot. I want to see people that look like me at different levels within the company. And so I think this is more of a call to action to those on the call to say, I feel as Black community, sometimes we get this imposter syndrome to say, I don't think I'm a great fit for this role, or I don't think I have all of the qualifications, but I would just give you that call to action now to just apply. I want to see more of us, at every level of the company. So apply. And so as it's something really important to me to just see that we're represented across the board.
That's great. So I want all of you guys to answer this one because it'll be a short answer. One word to define the culture of working at Google. I'll start with Reginald. One word.
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to take 2 words. your whole self. In other words, you can bring your whole self to Google and be who you are, your authentic, genuine self, because that's really what makes an environment that you can really thrive in.
Who wants to go next? One word.
I'll go next. I'm going to say actually it's eclectic. There's no just one way to be a Googler.
Mm,
A very diverse team. We have very diverse backgrounds. So I show up as me, as Reginald says, authentic, and I know that I'm bringing value add to the table. I don't have to try to be like anyone else. I am proud of what I bring to the table. I am acknowledged with what I bring to the table. So it's an eclectic group. So you don't have to worry about, do I fit in? Be
mm,
yourself.
that's great.
So I'll add to that because I think what both Anise and Reggie said are spot on. I'll say focus, right? So what do I mean by focus? I think once you bring your authentic self to the place and understand that you can be authentic, we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome. You'll have a bit of that while you're here, right? But if you can focus on whom you are, your skills and talents, and what you bring to this organization, what you can help build Google with, if you can focus and stay aligned with that by utilizing the resources that you have, whether it's within the Black Plus community or others, if you can maintain that focus, right, you can have a wonderful career here. It won't be perfect. There's no place that says utopia doesn't exist, right? But as we aspire to do that, as long as you can maintain that focus, I think you'll be okay.
Yes, and I would double down on sort of utilizing all the resources you have to say collaborative. I believe that there's so much pressure on us to think we need to fix the problem, we need to provide the solution, but you could actually leverage the strength of the team. I think there was a pivotal change in my mindset when I started to think about the we, right? I don't need to like build the strategy on my own. I have this wonderful team members, this cross-functional partners that I could actually leverage their strength. And so collaboration, I would say, is that word for me.
So I am showing up as my genuine, authentic self. I'm focused in on that. I'm collaborating with others. What with all that mixture, what does success look like then at Google?
So I'll take that one. I think it's important for us to be able to define success for ourselves, but at the same time, we are expected to perform. Um, what do I mean by that? When I joined Google, there were some role responsibilities with my role that was expected of me. But I was able to look at various problem set and self-initiate projects that my manager and my director had never even thought of. So there I am now driving projects self-initiated that bring 10x impact to the table.
Hmm.
So when you know who you are and you know the value that you bring to the table, of course, performing your role because that's seen as success because there are performance reviews, but also don't stay in a box or don't think there is a box. If you see that there is a issue that you have a set of skills that can solve, raise that up to your manager and director and tell them how you plan to solve it, give a business plan, and you might find yourself an exciting self-initiated project.
That's great. Anybody else? What does success look like at Google?
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that a bit because I'll go back to the words that we've talked about before. Authenticity, I think that's really a thing that stands out for me. And so in this context, when I first joined Google, I was surprised that I could be on a video conference call and somebody would have on a Black Lives Matter shirt as part of a business meeting, right? Or of course, it's Pride Month that's happening right now. Being able to represent your whole self and whatever that might mean to you, Google is an environment that you can do that, right? So once you can be your authentic self, and build comfort in that, because quite frankly, it's taking me some time to build comfort in, can I really be me here, right? Then I think it's understanding, okay, what is the expectation of my deliverables now that I can be whom I am and don't necessarily have to um, code switch or content switch as much as I used to do. Again, this is not utopia, and you have to be understanding of the state in which you're in. But I feel less of a burden from my journey in doing that here than other places.
So, all this talk about the amazing culture, benefits, resources that you have at your fingertips, I know that our listeners are even more excited about the potential to work there than before. So, want to know what recommendations and advice you have to prepare for the interview and hiring process at Google.
Yeah, I would probably jump in here and say the best thing that you can do, and I can't really say that this is just strictly related to Google. It's just a matter of almost any new opportunity that you're applying for. I do a lot of interviewing. I interview tons of different candidates that are coming through for both my team and other teams. And one of the things sometimes during the interview, I want to stop them and I want to coach them. And what I want to tell them, and I can't, you just have to just kind of let it flow. But I want to coach people to say, when I ask you a question about something, a concept, an idea, or something, give me a tangible story. Give me an example. Tell me exactly how that applies, how you've actually done it. Have a start and a stop to the story with an end result, with a show me how success occurred. People connect with stories. People connect with your experiences. But if you just give me a book answer, or here's how it could be done, and here's how I've seen it, other people do it, or some theoretical, people will almost zone out almost right away. So tell a story. Have a story for everything that you're trying to prove to show that you are well qualified and can exceed at that particular position. So that would be my advice. Again, I think it's probably more generic, but it's certainly at Google. People want to hear about real results as opposed to theory.
Gotcha. So perhaps the STAR format, if you're not familiar, look it up. I like it. Anybody else? Recommendations and advice to prepare for interview and hiring.
Yeah, one bit, and maybe I'll have some more here, but before you get to Reggie, right? Before you get to that interview table, take a look at your resume and your LinkedIn page to ensure that it is in alignment with the job or job that you are applying for, right? Because you want to make sure that you're expressing the skills that the recruiter and Reggie is looking for up front. That's critical. You might be qualified or more qualified than the candidates Reggie might be seeing, but if you didn't say that in your documentation, it'll be hard for you to get the seat at the table to have this conversation.
And I would imagine, since both of many people brought up networking to help you get the job, like those are some of the types of questions that you would ask while you were networking, right? To just get a better understanding of what's expected.
Correct. And I was just going to say that one thing you should also do is try to reach out to someone in that role. You should try to speak. You're probably going to get more from speaking to them than from, digging through Glassdoor or doing a Google search. And so you can spend like a few minutes just trying to learn more about the role. And as much as Google is trying to see if you're a fit for Google by interviewing you, you should also be assessing Google to say, and assessing the role to say, is this a fit for me, right? So that's the other thing where you have to come to those discussions with some of the questions that are really important to you and are top of mind for you so that you can walk away from that conversation knowing that the role and Google is also a fit for you.
The only thing I would add is, for example, we're speaking to National Black MBA members. Back in 2019, before the pandemic, the Atlanta chapter for the National Black MBA actually had something called Inside Look, where Google came and allowed MBAs to actually interact with Google leaders. That's how I started my networking. I met probably 10 Google leaders that night, but I zeroed in on 3. And they were very helpful in me understanding the process, learning more about roles, keep my head up. I didn't get the first job I applied for, It took several months of applying before I got someone's attention.
Mm,
Once I got that attention, baby, I did my research and I got in. So as a National Black MBA member, you're afforded many opportunities for various corporations like Google. Take advantage of that.
mm, mhm. Absolutely take advantage of all the resources available to you. Um, so another thing about demystifying working at Google, talk to me about non-technical backgrounds becoming a competitive candidate at Google. Possible? How does it happen?
Yes, so I'll jump in real quick here on this one and say one of the things that clearly you have to understand the language, clearly you have to have an aptitude, clearly you have to have a track record of success. But what I've found after this is sort of once you get past the sort of the recruiting stage here, is that what really people are looking for, and now I'm just going to ask you to Google the word googly, right? Go out and do your research on what it means to be googly. What is it? What does the culture mean? What are people looking for? And if they don't distinctly ask you questions related to that, people are almost semi-trained to look for googly characteristics. And so even if you don't have a tech background or have worked in tech before, if you understand the language, have a good track record, and you show yourself as being googly, you have a much better chance of advancing beyond beyond the initial rounds and doing very well. But Google the word googly, though. I won't tell you what it means.
Reginald, I would add to that there are technical roles and non-technical roles. So if you go out on the database or the site where the careers are and you're non-technical, look for those non-technical roles. Everyone doesn't have to have a technical background to work at Google.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. I want to transition now to a live question that came in from the audience. With all the experience you have acquired, what advice would you give to potential students who aspire to sit in the positions you all have obtained? And that is from Helen. Who would like to answer Helen's question?
I'll go first with Helen's question. Thank you, Helen, for the question. I think there's a couple of pieces of advice that I would give you, and you've heard kind of snippets through this in the entire conversation. As a potential student, right, I think, building the relationships, if you're undergraduate or graduate, I don't know, on the campus, right, I think, there's lots of relationships on the campus, really from an undergraduate standpoint. From a Google perspective, we have great relationships with campus universities. If it's not on your campus university there, then reach out, use your network to build those relationships with somebody at Google. LinkedIn is a wonderful place. I do understand that sometimes it's hard to just reach out to somebody cold, but if you explain your story, they have a common background as you, i.e. Black MBA, more often than not, they're going to be willing to connect with you to build that relationship that you can maintain short term with specific questions while you're in school, or even longer term as you try to drive your path towards Google.
I would plus one, Craig, and I would also say don't miss the opportunity to attend the National Black MBA Conference. If that is on your radar as an MBA student, when I was at Vanderbilt, when they told me this is where they're coming to look for you, I didn't really get it till I got there. I'm like, oh my God, they are really looking for me. This is where I need to apply, walk up, shake hands, have my 30-second elevator speech for why they should talk to me, for why they should want to, all of those things. Be ready, be prepared. Don't walk up and say, what jobs do you have available? Looked at the career database and specifically say what job you're interested in and why they should look at you. So do our homework. And as Craig said, network. Find people who will give you mock interviews, so be prepared. Look at yourself in the mirror and talk to yourself. If you can't look at yourself in the eye, then you won't look at an interviewer or recruiter in the eye. Prepare yourselves.
That is excellent advice. And FYI, registration is open for our conference career fair if you're interested in attending. So the next question is, with all the investment in DEI, given the current socio-political environment, what do you hope will truly stick long term?
I'll jump in on this one. One of the things I think that's really happening, and by the way, for Black people in general, there's never not been a time where there was some socio-political issue or problem or something going on in America that is impacting all of us. So this is always going to be the case. So there's no current, it's an always. But so given that situation again, and given that background, one of the things that is happening, for example, here at Google, like when we have, I attend a weekly leadership team meeting, and each month one of the individual leaders is responsible for bringing a DEI topic or some information or article or some video that they've seen that they want to share and have an open discussion about to raise the level of sensitivity of leaders to the entire community, no matter what community you're in. Because sometimes we're just heads down looking at just the day job. We forget that these are people with lives, people with backgrounds, people with different communities that we need to make sure we're sensitized to the things that are important to them. And so that's what I want to hopefully see long term, is that there's a continual emphasis on holding leaders accountable to ensuring that they're sensitive to the needs of the entire community and Black people in particular.
I would add to that, we've just had a recent decision by the Supreme Court of the United States, and all of the research says that it's going to impact the Black community in a very significant way. Tomorrow and the next day, there are going to be forums where women can join to voice how they feel. And from those various conversations, they're going to level up some suggestions and objectives to the higher leaders on what maybe Google should do in this regards. Now, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but you do have a voice in Google when it comes to social political activity, when it comes to the gun violence, when it comes to what's happening with women. So if you will exercise your voice, you can be heard here.
So I cannot believe how fast this hour has gone by. So I have one final question, and this is for everyone. What is your Google magic moment?
I'll go. I actually have two.
Okay.
I think it real quickly. I think it was the first time when I was hired. Number one, right? That was a magical moment, knowing that I had the opportunity to work for such a great company and make my impact here. And then number two was the first time I went into a Google office. I had been here 18 months and had not been into a Google office, and to experience what a real Google office is, all the benefits, the perks, all the things that are there. It is almost like a Disneyland moment when you walk into the office for the first time.
I'll go very quickly. Because of some self-initiated projects, I actually gained the attention of a vice president and received a spot bonus. That doesn't happen very often, especially for a new Googler. And then I did get my trip out to corporate 2 weeks ago. I got on the Google bike, I went out with my teammates. And you have to be careful because all the food is free and you'll end up getting what they call the Google 15. So those were the Google magic moments because it's food and snacks and things galore.
Yeah, similar to Anise and Craig, mine was the first day of orientation. I got to don the Google hats with the propellers, took a bike around campus, met a lot of other Nooglers. And I had this sense, this surreal moment and this sense of fulfillment in some sense of I made it. and so I think there are so many fun moments, but that actually stood out for me.
Great.
Well, and for me, it was the Lizzo concert, free Lizzo concert for everybody in the Bay Area. You arrive there, and you ride the bike down to to the amphitheater. You walk in, have free drinks, and you say, "Is this all the food is free?" Yeah, all the food is free, unlimited drinks. So hey, you can't beat that. And then Lizzo put on a one heck of a performance. I thought to myself, yeah, I've now arrived. This is pretty cool.
Absolutely. That sounds magical to me. Speaking of magical, thank you all for this magical moment, for sharing your insights It's been a wonderful session. Thank you, Google. Thank you to the panelists. And thank you all for joining us and for your engagement. I believe that this was an amazing session and would love to hear from you as well. So we encourage you to complete the link in the survey that you'll see in the chat. Your feedback is very important to us. The first 25 people to complete that survey will be entered in a chance to win a gift card. So do not delay. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a very restful rest of your evening. Good night.